Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meets the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I am thrilled to be joined today by Terry Tucker. We will be discussing the 4 truths to living an extraordinary life. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits as well as high net worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Take a minute or two and please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Sure, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of me. I grew up in Chicago, went to college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship, excuse me. And then when I graduated, I moved home to find my first job. I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I realized kind of what a knucklehead I was back then to think I knew much about business. Fortunately, was able to find that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. But unfortunately, I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mom care for my grandmother and my father, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. In terms of my professional career, as I said, I've been a marketing executive. I've been a hospital administrator, been a customer service manager, a police officer. I was also an undercover narcotics investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator. I had my own school security consulting business. I've been a basketball coach, a motivational speaker. Last year, I became an author. But for the last 9 years, pretty much, I've been a cancer warrior. And then finally, my wife and I have been married for 28 years, and our only child, a daughter, is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is a lieutenant in the newly created Space Force here in the U.S.
Well, thank you for your service and thank her for her service.
I will.
And since you have the SWAT background and the police background, I'll be nice to you.
That's okay. I don't have my handcuffs with me. So
you wrote that you were an NCAA Division college basketball player. So this has nothing at all to do with our topic, but seeing that yesterday in the news, they reported that the NCAA is now going to allow college players to financially benefit from their participation in sports. I was just wondering about your take on that.
Yeah, I see both sides of it. I understand that there are some people that are very marketable. I mean, with shoe contracts and clothing lines and all kinds of things like that. I also understand that they're student athletes and the student comes before the athlete, and you are getting or receiving a free, I'm not going to say free because you definitely work for it. You're receiving an education in regards to the work that you put in. And I get it. It's a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year job. And it really is. But I also think the NCAA has got a bunch of knucklehead rules out there. I remember our daughter played college basketball at the Air Force Academy. And I remember one of the times she was being recruited by DePaul University in Chicago. We went for a visit and I noticed that there were a bunch of bagels that were available. And I said to the coach, I said, "Is this for your athletes?" He said, "It is." He said, "The athletes can come in and grab a bagel, but the NCAA does not allow us to give them cream cheese, jellies, or anything like that. So you can give them a bagel, but the NCAA rules say you can't give cream cheese or jelly or anything to put on that bagel." So I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, really? You're allowing them the food, but you can't have this. I think it's probably about time the NCAA kind of came into the 21st century, and I'm glad for the players that can benefit from it. But I also think that, most of the players that won't benefit from it still benefit because they get a free education.
I don't even know how to comment on that bagel and cream cheese business. And I don't have enough experience to, I didn't go to, I went to university in Israel. Um, Athletics was not a part of the environment. So I don't get it, but I figured I'd take advantage of your presence and ask you the question and leave it at that. Now, our topic, you developed 4 truths to living an uncommon and extraordinary life. So let's focus on how this came about first. How did you arrive at the knowledge that there are 4 truths, 4 ways to live an uncommon and extraordinary life?
So really my journey to those 4 truths, certainly it's been over the course of my life, but for the last 9 years, I've been battling a very rare form of melanoma that has seen me have multiple surgeries. I was on a drug where I had the flu every week for 5 years just to prevent the disease from reoccurring. In 2018, I had my left foot amputated. In 2019, I had more surgeries. And then in 2020, an undiagnosed tumor in my ankle grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And my only recourse right in the middle of the pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. So it's kind of the old Winston Churchill quote, if you're going through hell, keep going. I certainly feel that I have been going through hell, but I've also taken that hell, taken that pain and used it to make me stronger, to make me more determined. And over these past 9 years, I have developed these 4 truths. And I only had 3 of them initially. And then the more I thought about it, number 3 that you and I have talked about before the show was one that I've added very recently, because I think it's important for people to kind of think about the end game in their life. What are people going to say about you at your funeral? Would your ancestors be happy with the life that you have led?
So let's look at the 4. And the first one is control your mind, which sounds to me like mind over matter, which is something that I happen to know is very accurate. So explain to us what you mean by it.
So control your mind was really something that I learned very early on. When I was 15 years old, I had 3 knee surgeries in high school. And I remember, my mind was, when I started to play again, my mind was like, hey, you're probably a step slower, or coaches aren't going to be interested in recruiting you. And I think the first thing you need to be is cognizant of these thoughts in your brain. Your brain can hold one thought at a time. Why would you make that a negative thought? So I learned that I needed to control what those thoughts were. I needed to kind of turn the switch and say, no, wait a minute. I'm still playing at an elite level. I'm still having coaches that are contacting me about wanting to play for their teams in college. So this idea that, controlling your mind or it will control you was really at 15 years old, something that I learned. And over the cancer journey, you get to a point where, our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo is great. Just let things stay where they are. But the status quo is never going to allow you to grow. The only way you're going to grow is to step outside that status quo. But when you do that, your brain's going to kick in. Just like finding a new job. I want to find a new job. Well, wait a minute. You get along great with the employees here, and you may not at a new company, or you understand the routines here, and that may not be the case at your new company. Your brain is going to kick in and start saying things that are negative. So you need to flip that switch and say, no, this is the best thing for me now. I need to grow. So I need to look for that new job. So that's where that one came from.
Well, I'll tell you 2 quick stories. I don't remember where I was flying to, but I was seated in the 2nd row of economy, and in the middle seats to my right, there was a little girl, 6, 7, who had severe abdominal pains. And there was a doctor on the plane, and he walked around and he asked if anybody had any pain medication. The plane was full. Nobody had anything, which he didn't believe. But all right, what are you going to do? There was somebody who had an Altoid, and he asked for an Altoid. And he walked over to the little girl and he said, I'm going to give you a very powerful pain pill. And remember, I saw all this. And you know, an Altoid is kind of big. He broke it in half. He said, now it doesn't taste very good, but you have to let it dissolve on your tongue. So he put it on her tongue. She closed her mouth and she was crying because she didn't like the taste of the Altoid. And he was looking at everybody with a look of, don't say a word. And within 5 minutes, she was sound asleep. Emergency landing, ambulance pulled up, sirens galore, doors open, they pick her up, they put her on the special gurney to get out of the plane. And it was amazing. And the doctor came back and he spoke with I could see that he was speaking with the physician on the ambulance. And then he came back on and I looked at him and said, placebo effect? And he said, yep. And he goes, mind over matter. Now, the second one happened to me. I have what's called Graves' disease, which is when your thyroid goes crazy. And the symptom that I will have for the rest of my life, because there's no way I'm having this surgery, is I have double vision. The ophthalmologist said, it's only putting a stitch in your eye, it'll cure it. No one's putting a stitch in my eye. It's not, it's a nuisance, I'll live with it. But I have to wear special glasses that have what's called a prism. And when I got them and I put on the reading glasses, which was the first one the optometrist handed to me, I could see fine. When I put on the distance glasses, I was very upset because they weren't working. And she said, give it a day. If it still doesn't work, come back. So I went home and I'm sitting and I'm looking out this window in front of me, and I take off the glasses and I see one car on top of another car. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. If they messed up both pairs, fine, but to get one pair right and the other pair wrong. So I stood at the door and I took off the glasses and I put the glasses back on. And I had read an article for a book I was ghostwriting on creating neural pathways in the brain. So I said, let's give it a try. And for about a half hour, I was going like this, waiting for the police to show up because my neighbors would have called to say, he's finally gone absolutely crazy. And all of a sudden, my brain was convinced that the glasses were working and the glasses started to work. So I can understand that you can control your brain. You can have somebody else control it for you, as the doctor did with the little girl, or the way I did it with myself. This wasn't the placebo effect. This was teaching my brain that something was new and to trust it. Now, that's controlling your mind so that it doesn't control you. But that brings me to your second point, which is to embrace the pain. The little girl didn't embrace the pain. Her mind rejected the pain. I didn't have pain, I had aggravation. I didn't embrace the aggravation. I used my mind to overcome it. So explain what you mean by embrace pain.
So again, this is probably the most difficult of the four for me to explain, because if I could explain it, I'd write a book about it and go live in Jamaica or something like that. It is instead of running from pain, and we probably all know people who, and when I say running, I some way to get away from it. We don't like pain. Pain hurts us, so we don't want to do that. And people medicate themselves. They take drugs, they take alcohol. Some people commit suicide for pain and things like that. What I'm saying is to do just the opposite of that. I'm saying to flip that pain inside and burn it as fuel, or use it as energy to make you stronger, to make you tougher, to make you more determined. And I've done that. And maybe it's just because I've had 9 years of, amputations and having the flu every week for 5 years and things like that. But now I don't run from that. And I don't want your audience to think that I'm anything special. I mean, when I was a little kid and I knew I was going to the pediatrician for a vaccine, I used to wait till my mom got out of the car and I'd lock all the doors from the inside, and it was kind of a cat and mouse game to get me out. That's how frightened I was of one shot. And yesterday I had an MRI and they had to stick me 9 times before they could get an IV in. And they kept, I'm sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. I don't have a leg. I mean, that was painful. Sticking me with a needle is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is use that pain instead of running from it. Use it, turn it inside to make you stronger. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something that if you take your time and you realize that it's coming and you use, okay, this is going to make me stronger. It's going to hurt, but it's going to make me tougher. You can do that.
And pain is important. I'm not comparing myself to you. I had stomach surgery and spent 27 days in the hospital. And a gentleman came into the ward. He had the bed next to mine. And after the first day didn't matter because he was out of it anyways. The second day, when he got the morphine, he said to me, I can still feel pain. And I said, well, you're supposed to feel pain. That's the only way they can tell if something's wrong. If you're totally numb and something bad happens, you won't know it. So pain is a good thing. There's a reason why we have pain. There's a reason why we have fear. So getting energy, I see this when people come to me and say, I've been fired. I want to kill my boss. He treated me unfairly. I want to get back at him. And I always say, great, don't break any laws and wait 6 months. And 6 months later, they don't call me up to find out how to get revenge. Because I tell them the best revenge that you can get is to get a new job and do very well for their competitor. And that anger is what energizes them. So the anger, pain can also be anger because it can be emotional and not physical. Sort of, and I mean, no disrespect and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that when a body part is amputated, there's such a thing as phantom pain. You still feel it even though it's not there because your brain doesn't know it yet. So it's the same sort of thing.
You're right. And I do. I mean, I'm sitting here right now with my right leg on the floor. I can feel my left leg on the floor as well. And my left leg isn't there.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Pain is inevitable for all of us. And it doesn't have to be, pain like your abdominal surgery or my amputations. It could be, you flunk a test in school, or you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or like you said, you get fired from your job or something like that. That's inevitable. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, that's optional. That's what you do with that pain. Do you take that pain, make you stronger, or go out and find another job for your competitor and show your boss? Or do you wallow in it? Do you sit down there and want people to feel sorry for you because of that? I just choose not to be sorry. And believe me, there's no S on my chest. I do not wear a cape, but I'm telling you, everybody can do that. You can take that pain and use it to make you a better person.
But you also have to listen to the pain.
You do.
This nonsense about no pain, no gain, that's wrong. If you're working out and all of a sudden you've got a pain, you stop because you could be doing yourself, walk it off isn't right.
No, but some people, there are those people that kind of feel that way. It's like, yeah, I've got a broken leg. I'm going back in the game, coach. Okay. That's probably not, 20 years, 40 years from now when you've got arthritis because of that, probably not a good idea.
No. Now, so we have control your mind, embrace pain, and your third point is what you leave behind, what we leave behind. So now we're talking about legacy. So the way I like to, and with a little bit of humor, But someone once told me this is a great question to ask at a networking event, but I have never asked it. I haven't had the guts to ask it. I don't know of anybody who's ever asked it. But when you are saying goodbye to somebody and you want to know what's important to them, they say, ask them what they want written on their tombstone, which is a terrible way of asking what's important to you, what's your legacy, explain the importance of what we leave behind.
Yeah, I thought it was important, as in all honesty, in addition to having my leg amputated, I have tumors in my lungs. So more than likely, I am coming to the end of my life. And, the story you told about the police showing up at your door, when I say this, they probably will show up at my door, or at least a psychologist or a psychiatrist will. I am not afraid to die. And the reason I'm not afraid to die is because I believe I found my purpose in life and I lived it. And it's okay to move on. I don't know why death scares people so much. I've seen a lot of people die as a policeman, and certainly in the number of years that I've had cancer. And the people that I've seen, and this is a huge generalization, the people that I've seen die what I guess you and I would call happy deaths are the people that seem to have found their purpose in life and to lived it. And yet the people who die, I want another day, or another one, I want another month, I want another year. Those are the people that seem not to have done anything with their lives. And I remember there's a Native American Blackfoot proverb that goes, when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. I want to live my life. And then for me, I have a very strong faith. I believe there's something else on the other side of this life. I feel it. I've seen it. I've seen it in the birth of our daughter. I live in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. You just can't tell me that there isn't something bigger than us. And again, I think that goes back for me as an athlete, having been involved in team sports. You know that you're part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's incredibly important, being part of a team. And what's the biggest team sport that we all play? The game of life. We're all we're all interconnected with each other. So I wanted people to think about the end game with that truth, and think about what people would say. And I'm not telling people that they've got to live the way other people think they do. I don't think that's the case at all. But if you don't like what people are saying about you, you've got time to change that when you're thinking about it now. What would your ancestors say? In many countries, that's very important. I want to live a life that is true to my ancestors. But, I just think it's important we sort of think of the end game and not just today. Today's the only thing I can focus on. Look at the big picture of your life. And that's where that truth has come. And that's why I added that truth to those 4 truths.
That's a great quote, and I plan to steal it.
Feel free.
So, control your mind, embrace your pain, legacy, and the 4th is don't quit.
Yeah, that's pretty explanatory, self-explanatory. My pain, your pain, everybody's pain is going to end eventually. It may end through surgery. It may end through medication. Quite frankly, it may end through death. But if I quit, if I give up, if I give in to the pain that I have, then I will always have pain. Pain will always be part of my life because I quit. So I always encourage people, just keep going. Just take that next step. There's a Navy SEAL by the name of David Goggins, and you may or may not have heard of him, but he talks about the 40% rule. And again, I understand this is Navy SEAL people who are probably some of the toughest people in the world. But what he says is, if you're at the end of your rope, if you're at the end of your life, or even if you go out, I'm going to go run 5 miles today, but I can only do 3. I'm at the end. I can't do anymore. What the 40% rule says is you're only at 40% of your maximum. You still have 60% left in reserve to give to yourself. So if that is true, And I believe it is, because I could spend some time telling you a very long story, which I won't, about laying on an emergency room gurney and literally looking at my wife and saying, please let me die. I need to get out of this body that is continually attacking me. And I remembered that rule. I remembered reading about this person, and I was able to kind of take that, tie a knot in the end of my rope, because I was certainly at the end of my rope, and just hang on. And I survived in that way. And again, something that I knew I have more. We all have more inside of us to give. The limits the limits we place on ourselves are the thing. That's not what I want to say. The limits that we have in life are the limits that we place on ourselves. Everything you need to be successful in life is already inside you. You just have to find it and pull it out.
But there are times when you have to say, I can't do this, or this is not going to work. You could be in business and you've been given an assignment, and you go to your boss, tail between your legs, and say, boss, it ain't going to happen. We're just going to be throwing good money after bad. It's time to pull the plug. And a good boss appreciates that. I am assuming that getting onto a SWAT team is only slightly easier than becoming a SEAL.
You could probably assume that, yes.
Yeah, I said slightly because I'm more afraid of the SEALs than I am of the SWAT. But there's a time when I don't know if SWAT has Hell Week, but there are, I don't remember. You'll probably know. 90% don't make it through Hell Week, and that's good for the team, because you've got to get rid of the people who can't do it. So sometimes you have to quit for the benefit of the common good. So how do
you do. And I have a friend who is a former Navy SEAL, and he talks about during, Hell Week and during the whole time, there is a brass bell that sits in the middle of the area where they train. And the only thing you need to do to stop all the cold swims and the 5 a.m. calisthenics and the miles and miles of running is to ring that bell. And he talks about how, if you want to make a difference in the world, never, ever ring that bell. And when I go for my therapies for my cancer, there's a bell that people ring when they're done, when they're finished with their chemotherapy. And I've had several nurses like, can't you wait to ring the bell? I'm like, I am not ringing that bell, because that to us, to law enforcement, to the military, ringing a bell is synonymous with quitting, and I will not quit. So I will not ring that bell.
That's interesting, because the bell at the hospital means the exact opposite of the bell for the police and the military, and you can't make that transition.
I can, I just don't want to.
Okay, all right. Well, one thing that we have to give into is time. And sadly, our time has run out. I want to put on and share with our viewers your contact information. But before I let you go, is there anything that I did not ask you that you wish I had asked you?
I guess I wish you'd asked me to tell my final story.
Tell us.
So I've always been a big fan of Westerns, and my parents used to let me stay up when I was a kid to watch, Gunsmoke and Wild Wild West. And I know I'm really dating myself, but in 1993, the movie Tombstone came out. You may have seen it. It starred Val Kilmer as a man by the name of John Doc Holliday, and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday were two living, breathing human beings who walked on the face of the earth. They're not just made up characters for this movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much he was a card shark and a gunslinger. And Wyatt was a lawman his entire life. And yet these two men from entirely divergent backgrounds formed this very strong and very close friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc is dying at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, about 3 hours from my house. The real Doc Holliday died at that sanitarium, is buried in the cemetery there. And Wyatt, at this point in his life, is destitute. He has no money, he has no job, he has no prospects for a job. So every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time that way. And in this scene, they're talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, I was in love with my cousin when I was young, but she joined a convent over the affair. But she's all that I ever wanted. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life, and get on with living yours. I'm sure, Bruce, you've seen people, and I've certainly seen people who look at their lives and say, if this happens, then my life will be normal. If that happens, then I'll be successful. If this happens, then I'll be prosperous. What I'm saying to you right now is don't wait for that life to happen. There is none of that. There is no normal life. Go out and make your life happen.
Terry, I thank you profusely again to you and your daughter for your service and for coming on the show. And I almost forgot, as a expat, given that this is July the 1st, I wish everyone a happy Canada Day. And as a proud American, I wish everyone and you and your family a happy 4th of July.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for having me on, and the same to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. As always, please remember, keep focused on success.